KTAR, Eyes on Parenting.
Kids these days, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? This is KTAR's Eyes on Parenting. I'm Corbin Carson. Today we're talking to new moms. I have a special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself to folks and what you do?
Sure. Corbin, first of all, thanks so much for having me on your program. So I love being able to talk to new moms. I've been a new mom 3 times, so I have 3 daughters who are 16, 14, and 9.5, almost 10, planning her birthday party as we speak. And I know that it can be really stressful to be a new mom. So I'm also a pediatric surgeon and a pediatric trauma surgeon. And I run a program called Arizona Mother Baby Care, which is a new program that's really trying to help connect the care of the mom to the care of the baby. And so, unfortunately, I know a lot about things that can be scary in that newborn period, and I also know a lot of things about what can be scary throughout childhood.
Perfect. So we're speaking with Dr. Kathleen Van Leeuwen. And when is it okay for a new mom to be paranoid?
So new moms need to know a couple main things, and one of the things is, was your baby born prematurely? And if your baby's born prematurely, you have different concerns about feeding and things like that. But if you have a full-term baby and you go home, you're not going to leave that hospital until a pediatrician says that you can. So a pediatrician is going to look at your baby and make sure that your baby is safe to go home. Once you do get home, how stressed out should you be? Well, first of all, ask your pediatrician. So you're going to see your pediatrician within a couple of days of going home. And if you have any concerns, you can talk to them about, my baby doesn't seem to be breathing right, or are they breathing too fast, or, is their color okay? What types of things should I worry about? I would say the main issue for brand new babies is feeding, pooping, crying, right? So this is what babies are supposed to do. They're supposed to eat, and they're supposed to poop, and they're supposed to cry and sound kind of normal. So if your baby is not feeding well, I don't want you to think that that's a disaster, but it's something you need to talk to the pediatrician about, especially if your baby is throwing up. Vomiting in a baby seems like it's normal, and you might have your mom or some other family member say, oh, all babies spit up. Well, that's true, but if your baby's spitting up a lot, especially if it's ever yellow or green, these are signs that need to be investigated. Babies can be born with their intestines set up in a way that they can twist, and that's called malrotation and volvulus. That can actually happen in 1 out of every 2,000 people. And if you're going to have that problem, it happens within the first 4 weeks of life in most cases. So what's called bilious vomiting or yellow or green vomiting is not I wonder if they'll tolerate the next feed, or I wonder how we're doing. Yellow and green vomiting means go to the emergency room and tell the emergency room, my baby just threw up yellow or just threw up green. You will be rushed back into the emergency room so we can make sure your baby doesn't have that twist. That's actually something to be paranoid about.
Wow, now that we've scared moms, let's scare them further and say, what are some of the most dangerous household items that you can have around the house?
Right. So household items, first of all, if you start with just a brand new baby that can't get themselves out of a situation, your baby is in a car seat or your baby is in a high chair, just make sure that it's really secure and that the baby can't fall out of that. So if you're taking the car seat in out of the house, your baby's in the car seat, seems secure. Don't put it on the kitchen counter, because before you know it, somebody else could come by, or you can get distracted, or that baby can grab on something and get themselves off the counter. So when they can't move around a lot, just make sure they're not going to fall. We see that all the time. The next thing is when they start crawling around your house, you have to make sure there is nothing airway sized on the floor. And this can be anything from a candy wrapper, little nails and pins and things like that. And then of course the worst case scenario is a battery, a button battery. So if your child comes across a button battery and decides to eat it, you won't know it's in there. It will go down their feeding tube, their esophagus, and it'll get stuck, and it can cause a huge problem. So what I did when my kids were little is you just walk around the house, and if you have something that you're wearing with pockets, you're just picking stuff up and putting it in your pockets. And you have to have a house that has no small airway objects for that whole period of time. So that includes coins, that includes Legos. We had a whole Lego section of the house for the older kids where the little kid could not go. And then eventually, then they can take care of themselves. They can clear their own airway, but you're in charge of their airway when they're little.
So baby-proof the house for at least the first child, because the second kid, well, you have a spare now, so just kidding. Baby-proof the house all the time. So what about foods? What about some things that are in the home that should be concerning that maybe regarding food?
So in general, kids as they get a little bit older can tolerate just about anything. So you're going to start with just the liquid food, and then you start with baby food. Baby food is just soft. When you get to finger foods, it just has to be something soft. So kids can eat, no, don't tell anybody this, but you can eat French fries, once you're eating finger foods. My kids were not raised on French fries, but we did not avoid
not that you
French
should,
fries, right?
but you can.
But you can. And the reason is that's a soft food. They're going to mush it up. They start with like the little Gerber puffs and things like that, but they're going to mush it up. And even if it went down the airway, they're still going to clear it. Things they cannot clear are things like a peanut. And I'm not really worried as much about peanut allergies, but I'm worried about a kid not being able to chew a peanut and getting a peanut or a pinto bean or something like that down their airway. Because again, it's airway sized, and we see that. You wouldn't believe how often we are just going down the airway and taking out peanuts. Sunflower seeds is a super common thing. So things that you might be snacking on, your kid doesn't know. They're just going to grab a handful and take it, and then if they get it down the wrong pipe, it can be an emergency.
All right, one thing you want to leave people with now that we have completely paranoid new moms out there, one thing to remember or one tip to remember about safety in the home.
So at some point your kid is sturdy and your kid can get themselves out of a situation. And you know when that is. You know when they can walk around, and if something ended up around their neck, they could get it off. Until that point, you are their safety net, and you need to be there to be able to do those things. So you really can't take your eyes off of them until they're sturdy.
Or until you have a second one. Just kidding. Well, there you have it, folks. This has been KTAR's Eyes on Parenting. I'm Corbin Carson. Father of 4, 1 in college, now 2 in college, another in first grade, and one still working on getting out of diapers. Chances are I'm facing a question you're facing. If so, hit me up on Twitter. Maybe I can help. I'd like to thank Dr. Van Leeuwen for joining us. We'll see you next time, folks.